Can I have a wife in chat, please? Pog, really? Wife. Okay, we're here. We're recording. Oh no. This is my really bad setup for my plant lamp. It is shorting, so it's got nice latex-free, adhesive-free bandages on it because I can't have either of those, and it's the only thing holding the cord in place so my plants can live. Oh well, okay. The world is crazy. My cat is sneaking. It's kind of par for the course for 2020, I guess. The podcast is 2 years old now as of last month, and this is the third video for YouTube. We're so old. It's great. I seriously hope you can hear my cat meowing right now. She is very jealous of all of you getting my attention. But, you know, you guys know where I've been. You know what's going on. The brain is great. My brain is great. The world is on fire. And, you know, as kind of predicted, unfortunately, the Black Lives Matter protest or awareness is not even steadily dropping, just steeply dropping online now. And there are still a lot of protests, but I don't see a lot of people talking about it anymore, which, to be fair, I haven't really been on social media that much. I've just been talking to some friends, mostly viewing the world through my in real life chat box over there. So I don't know. It's a lot. And I honestly have been on YouTube a lot. That's the one thing I really stay on because nobody knows when I'm on YouTube and I am only required to watch things. With the anxiety and crazy stuff that's just been on my head, I haven't been able to engage in things like I usually do. My energy is just like all over the place. So when I get on social media, I feel like I have to be giving Nelson Mandela length quality speech. Not that what I've had to say has ever been that quality, but hopefully you know what I mean. But since I've been on YouTube so much, it really has been like a toxic waste dumping ground in the last 2 months, I think, between Black Lives Matter and then the things that we are choosing as more important than Black Lives Matter. It's been very, very strange. And honestly, I have been kind of partaking in it too, which I'm going to get into later. There's just a lot that I want to talk about. And that's one of the other reasons why I'm only doing this now, because I just have not been able to decide what to talk about first. I want to talk about the insane setbacks we have had in the last few months regarding the transgender community. I have been wanting to talk about, obviously, what's happening in Black Lives Matter, and from the good things like K-pop stans taking over everything and sending Black Lives Matter propaganda to, I don't know, everyone who doesn't want it, which I can get behind, but also the very real changes that need to happen. Honestly, I've been like taking notes and recording things I want to talk about. So I have about 70 to 80 notes between my phone and my Google Drive, whatever I happen to be closer to, although I could put it on my drive from my phone. But as things happen, I write them down and things that I want to talk about. It's a lot. And if you focus on just the changes that need to happen, I think you could probably talk for about 6 years. I know I definitely could, but mostly a lot of the things that have been on my mind are the things that have never changed. It's the weirdest feeling to have been talking about some of these issues and to eternally be that angry person or that person always bringing up race. You know what I'm talking about. and now get here and have everyone jumping on a very strange bandwagon. I have been skipping through so many ads on YouTube. I normally don't if I like or subscribe to the person whose video I'm watching, because ad money, unless that's a scam, who knows. But the number of companies that have come out with really weird ads and commercials for products, for shows of support, capitalism, I don't know, it does not sit well with me, and that's been on my mind. It's also, I mean, I've been on YouTube, so Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star are on my mind, but that is something I'm going to get onto today. I don't know. As chaotic as everything is, there are definitely anchors of light, but I am not in the mood really to be talking about only good things unless it's in the context of the larger social movements, hopefully revolutions that are happening. Although, to be honest, something that I may or may not talk about in the future is, at what point does something become a war? We've been talking a lot about genocide as far as in this particular community we're all a part of, and also in the larger, hopefully, American narrative, at least in people that I see who are typically, admittedly, liberal. But yeah, in the context of social reform, I know a lot of people have been talking about the movie documentary on Netflix, 13th. I have not watched it because I have not prepared myself emotionally yet. If you listen to the episodes where I talked about the series that dealt with the Central Park 5, you heard me crying through an entire episode and then very emotionally distraught through the rest. Yeah, the series When They See Us on Netflix, watch it if you haven't. I will find you if you haven't, but also be prepared to cry a lot, to be angry. I don't know, but 13th is a really good documentary as well, but it's been out for a while, like I'm pretty sure years at this point. I don't know. I get stuck between this absolute fire in my chest of wanting to bring change yesterday and talking until I lose my voice, which would take a very long time, but I am surely capable of doing it. Or digging a hole and becoming a prepper and dipping out. It very violently in between, probably between 1 minute and the next. But I just, the last couple weeks especially, have just been mulling over when people start acknowledging what's happening or when certain words get applied to situations. I'm sure that when we look through history, historical figures of the times didn't say, yes, we shall dump the tea into the harbor, and that shall be our first act of war. There might have been people who said that as blatantly, but I feel like in 10, hopefully less, years, when we look back at what's happening now, there won't be this separation or gap between the genocide of Native peoples in the North America and now, because it's never stopped in the same way that slavery and its wonderful byproducts have never changed, only changed forms, or never ended, only changed forms. So that's been a very curious thing, and I don't think there's really a clear answer for that, but it is something that I have in mind. And if that's something you've also been thinking about, please let me know so that I can talk to someone and stop feeling like I'm constantly catastrophizing. Because honestly, when you look at the statistics between police brutality to the MMIW Two-Spirit the MMIW Two-Spirit Girls and Relatives movement, which is still growing and expanding in the statistics that are coming out from people who've been able to invest time and money into researching these things, it's appalling. And I think it's just really overwhelming. Those feelings of, I'm exaggerating or being dramatic, I feel like is a very natural response to a situation that has grown and has always been extremely overwhelming. So I think that's why things like YouTube drama right now seem like the biggest things in the world. I don't know where people are not talking about YouTube drama right now, which I guess is strangely meta. I don't even want to call it that, since I am now here recording a podcast episode that's going to be on YouTube. But I have heard so many podcasts that don't have anything to do with the YouTube drama talk about Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star. The one that I've heard covered the most is ScamWow. I love ScamWow so much. It is my favorite thing in the world. I need to be friends with the hosts on there, especially Sue. But that kind of brings on the issue of parasocial relationships, which is a really fun highbrow term for something that can be very complicated and has a lot to do with the YouTube drama. I'm really not going to talk about why everyone is up in arms about Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson, but I want to talk about it insofar as saying I really wish that all of the energy and vitriol and anger that people had have towards these two creators, CEOs, very rich people now, if people could have that same anger and sustain it for as long as Black Lives Matter, or towards Black Lives Matter and MMIW. I mean, partially that's a very biased thing because those are two issues that I care very much about, but at the same time, genocide. But both of these people, these creators, have been adjacent in these issues, have done things that are disgusting and offensive, and I don't think anyone can really excuse. And if you've ever listened to Forensic Friends, which is the podcast that I'm on with my friend Shelly, we talk about forensics and science and medicine. In particular, we switch topics. So every other week, 1 week Shelly talks about forensics because that is her deal, and my weeks, on the off weeks, I talk a lot about just general medical and science things. We've been talking about lately phrenology, which is really interesting, which is the study, or the pseudoscience now, of how people's skulls correlate to their personalities. There was a belief that came about and really people ran with in early United States that Black people had enlarged skulls or deviations in areas of the skull that indicated that they would be submissive, servants, meant to be servants. There's a lot of rhetoric. Okay, well, really, up until and through Reconstruction era, Jim Crow, Civil Rights Movement. Still today, if you listen to some people talk, who honestly I wish did not have a platform, but anyway, like I said, there's a lot going on in my head and trying to share space, but what it comes down to is Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star are kind of scapegoats, I think, for what's going on right now. I think that people are taking all of this frustration towards the situation against Black people, police brutality, all the stuff going on in the world right now, and they're directing that at these two people who, while they might be rich and have large platforms and be making a lot of money, or especially recently have made a lot of money off of certain makeup releases, they are not as big or as corrupt or as insidious and dangerous as the United States government. So taking them down, or taking them deplatforming them, as I guess we've been calling it, is a lot easier than fixing systematic racism that's been set up since the US was formed. So, or before really. I was just listening to a podcast. I was talking about something called the Leopard Society, which was a group or a secret society that started in the West Indies during the times of slave trade. It started off to fight against colonists and slave traders and then turned into something crazy. But honestly, like, when you really start looking into history and the impact that the slave trade had, you just keep branching into more and more things. Just everything from housing to medicine to band-aids. That's a fun thing. I was in a store. I'm probably going to talk about this later in more detail, but I saw recently there was a brand that released darker shades of nudes for band-aids, and I think that's pretty much a metaphor for everything that's going on right now that is good and also horrendous. The companies that are putting out things and these apologies that are coming from creators who have been historically extremely terrible, we might forgive you in the sense that you as a person can continue to exist, but that doesn't mean that we're going to encourage or participate in anything you're doing. And I think that's something that I've really had to think about. But when I brought up the podcast with Shelly, we talked about when the drama came out, I was really torn about how I thought about it or how I felt about the drama, because I know that in the past, both Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson had addressed their previous actions, especially Shane Dawson, and had apologized for the racism, said that they were growing, says that they would make such and such efforts to be more aware and educate themselves. And on the one hand, that is the reaction I want everyone to have. I want people to see their own racism or their internalized prejudices, the systems that they participate in that they may not have been aware of. Even myself, I'm always learning and trying to educate myself on situations that I didn't know about, like the Leopard Society, the good and the bad. It turned out very, very badly. But I only knew about Jeffree Star when he apologized the first time. And I think that for me, I am a very gullible, or I can be a very gullible or naive person. And so if someone says that they're going to make a effort to change, that has a lot of weight to me, especially if someone can point out their failings or their mistakes or their past prejudices they didn't know about, or did know about, just didn't understand the ramifications and the context. That to me is a really good sign, because in my head, if someone can say what they did wrong, can articulate why it's a bad thing, then they won't do anything else. Which, again, I understand is really naive. It's like if you tell a small child not to hit someone because it hurts, they understand for the most part, and for the next 5 minutes won't hit someone. I mean, it differs between children, but you get the idea. I just expect that people don't want to be nasty or hateful to other people, and am always surprised, in a not good way, by people and what they say and do. So I was very, very angry about the drama. I did use it, I think, as something that I could do beyond educating or trying to educate or trying to speak out against things, trying to draw attention to people who are doing a much better job than me about talking about what's going on. like so like my god, I every time I get on social media and I see what Soph is doing, I am blown away by the fact that one, I have a friend like that and that she can stay so passionate. We've talked about it and we both have gone through moments of feeling really defeated, but she has taken that and is continuing to fight, and that to me is just extremely admirable. I think that was a quality I used to think that I held, but right now obviously I am very hard on myself because I feel like I'm not doing as much as I can or should, but at the same time trying to balance what I can do realistically. And I think that we all kind of have to find that. I know that not everyone can go out and continue protesting, but if you can, please do. I don't know. And that's another thing. I remain annoyed. Annoyed is an understatement. By the people who were like, I need a haircut. Why do I have to wear a mask? My freedom. I want to freely give and spread and catch a disease that people are dying from. Yeah, okay. But then these people are like, National Guard against protesters? We gotcha. We're going to do it. I back it up. I'm going to take my stupid weapon that's like literally made to kill things into the public to back the fact that that other people's freedom should be restricted, especially when it's inconvenient. It makes no sense to me. No sense. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I have gone on rants and my poor wife over there has just heard me rage on and on and on about the same things, on and on and on. Like I expect people to magically stop being garbage. I don't know. What can you do? But luckily there are people who have compiled Karen breakdowns for me on YouTube, and that reminds me that garbage people are going to garbage. I don't know where we're going to go from there, but hopefully somewhere better. But that is another thing. I voted today in my local election, and when I went with my girlfriend, again, elderly people everywhere, which is fine. It's not that they're elderly that I'm upset about. It's the fact that we have always been the youngest people voting around us. We are talking about Black Lives Matter. We've talked about protesting. People have protested. We've continued to do things that have been very small, very large, in order to raise awareness and hopefully bring change. And voting, especially in local elections, is the biggest thing that you can do. I want to see lines outside of these precincts, but I don't. It's deserted. People still aren't voting, which is beyond me. Beyond me. We are in this situation because the system has been allowed to stay the same. And the longer it stays the same, the harder it is for us to change anything. So by not participating in local elections, by not, if you are so inclined, running for political office, which that's a fun thing. My township or my particular local area that I live in had no Democratic candidates at all, which is really frustrating because when you vote for local elections, it's Democrat, Republican, because we have a two-party system despite what we're supposed to have. But I don't know. Everyone makes fun of AOC. Not everyone. A lot of people make fun of AOC. She's very polarizing. You have this young woman who is a waitress in politics. How dare she? But like, can we get more of her? Obviously, that's not the easiest thing, and she constantly has to deal with actual death threats and people tearing her apart left and right and choosing to go after her looks or her past as if nobody had to start an entry level job, instead of looking at the policies she's actually proposing, the change she wants to bring. And whether you agree with her or not, I think we can all appreciate the energy she's bringing, the desire to bring change, because despite the number of black boxes I've seen, there's not much else besides that in the general populace. So I don't know. I say that I want us to have that same energy, that same anger and drive to change something as it's been directed at Shane and at Jeffrey. And I think it's a lot easier to go after them also because what needs to happen is kind of clear. If you decide that they should be deplatformed, that means that they should be either taken off YouTube, their content is no longer consumed, streamed, watched, no product of theirs is purchased. Those are pretty clear ways to deplatform them. But when you're talking about systematic racism in the United States, where there are all these flowery words, especially from the founding fathers, which that's going to be something I'm going to talk about in the future once I calm down, which isn't guaranteed to happen. But I feel so petty and salty right now. This is why I take so long to record, because I just get really upset and derail myself. But it's really, when you look at these laws with all their flowery words from the founding fathers especially, you have all of these systems that were put in place from the very beginning to have freedom and benefit only a certain group of people. And changing that should be cut and dry. Looking at it, it's obviously wrong. It's obviously wrong that Black people were and still are considered a different species in some cases. There was Thomas Jefferson, who I think is scum of the earth, and I will never stop calling him scum of the earth. He wrote a lot and backed testing on and abuses towards Black people because they were a subspecies. So when you're facing that kind of stuff, it seems like it'd be very easy to point out and say, that's wrong, stop doing that. But it has influenced everything down to the level of, if a Black person goes to the ER, still to this day, there are medical students who are told that Black people have a higher pain tolerance. So it is documented and has been that Black people in general, especially Black women, do not receive proper care, especially when it comes to pain. They have to jump through more hoops, it has to be more severe, or they have to turn to alternative options for pain and health care because they're just not going to get it. And that's not an easy thing to change. We're talking about re-educating at every level. And there are so many aspects of change that need to happen, so many aspects of racism that really need to honestly be put on the table, discussed, dissected, looked at honestly, have our feelings assessed, take our feelings out sometimes. That I get it. It's not easy. And when you're looking at something that seems so insurmountable, it's 2020 and we're still having to deal with all of this racism. So what are we going to do about it now that's going to be any different from what people have done in prior civil rights movements? And I feel that way a lot of the time too. But all I really think we can do is continue. My girlfriend and I were talking about it after we voted today. And we were talking about the lack of Democratic candidates or young candidates involved in politics or running, and young people voting. And when you have young people going into politics, there is something that has been, I really don't know how to say it in a nice, neat way. There's this idea that all these young people with their motivation and drive wanting to bring change right now, that's not politics. Politics is a marathon, not a sprint. And to an extent, I think that's right. But only because there are so many problems that you can't sprint through all of them right now. And that if you want to bring change, you have to make everything you do something that you truly believe needs to happen and change now. Act as if you expect it to change now, but also have a 5-year plan for if nothing happens. So I don't really know what that looks like, obviously. I'm trying to figure that out, and I think having a YouTube channel that's kind of in conjunction with the podcast, but a little separate, is going to help as well for my salty videos about the founding fathers, especially Thomas Jefferson, which probably is going to be the first one, to be honest. Andrew Jackson's a great one that I'm going to talk about too. Just look forward to that. But it isn't necessarily having to do with Some Kind of Brown, which is supposed to be a safe space for mixed people and people of color, and also, people who are in the community who might not be people of color. While all of this does for sure impact the community, that has been something I've been really thinking about, how I want to still feel like I'm talking about important things, but stay true to what I wanted to start or continue with Some Kind of Brown. Like I said, 8 rabbit holes ago, probably more. Some Kind of Brown is 2 years old now. It's been a crazy 2 years, both for the podcast and also for myself. And while I want to grow the community in the sense that we all feel more and more comfortable to talk about things, we all have moments of growth, moments of healing together, I also want to grow the things we're talking about, but stay true to those of us who are in this community. So dividing my more historical commentary type things or anything else I decide to do that is adjacent but not quite fitting under the umbrella of Some Kind of Brown, I do want to put on the YouTube channel. So that's something that I'm going to be working on in the future, and helps me, just like with systematic racism, have a better plan for the next 5 years. I don't know. I'm looking at my notes. I don't know if I honestly can give all of this the individual attention that they need as far as putting everything in this episode. Honestly, I really do, when I get an idea of something I want to talk about, just like start word vomiting, and I think I really need to realize that I can't say everything at once. Which is just my overall lesson for this episode. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I can only say one word at a time, despite what my brain thinks that I should be able to do. So, I don't know. What are you guys, how are you guys feeling? I feel like so many of us are either running out of stamina or on some cycle of hitting a wall and needing to relax a little bit and then starting all over again. What do you think we can do to make this fight sustainable? To be able to keep ourselves from getting in a place of complacency, because I think that's a really big thing that's been happening. This system was built brick by brick, and when you accept that bad things are going to happen, that good things are out of reach, then you stop working towards them, and that becomes more true than it ever was. So I'm very, very interested to see what you're doing to cope with that, or how you're thinking about it, both because I think it's a good conversation to have, and also because I am looking for better ways to do things, so I don't end up depressed. If you are watching this video, nothing is going to change between now and the next video to go up on YouTube, because I'm going to be recording it right after this. But it does kind of go hand in hand with it. I think I'm probably going to go into a commentary channel type direction, which is ridiculous to say, because A, if you know me, I don't like being pigeonholed, and B, I have a podcast, so by nature I am a commentary person. I don't know, I say words, but there is something I really want to talk about, dealing with particularly the way people are handling Black Lives Matter, particularly two people called Paul and Morgan of the channel Paul and Morgan, and most specifically the argument that they are putting forth that I have just reached my limit with. If I hear it from anyone else, there is no guarantee that I'm going to be nice or quiet in talking about how I feel about it, to be honest. So that's just a warning. But that whole idea that people from the outside of the Black community can look at what's happening and just be like, I see that you're hurting and that there's a lot of injustice, but could you protest better? Could you be a little less uncouth with asking for change? Ask a little nicer, maybe I'll listen. I am done minding my manners. I don't think I have any manners left at this point, and I really want to talk about that. So if you want to talk about that as well, come to the YouTube channel. Tell me what you want to see as well. Tell me what you want to hear on the podcast. If you have been listening to the podcast for a long time and you're okay with growing this into the direction of talking about even more politics and things like that, and not just like mixed race or race related issues, never mind. All of my politics is going to be race related. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. I could ramble and continue this episode for 2 hours on my own, but I'm going to let all of these other things that I have running in my mind have the time they deserve on their own, and check out next Wednesday for the video about how I feel about that argument, especially towards Paul and Morgan, who just happen to be, honestly, I'm not going after them in particular. This isn't going to be like a reaction to their video. It's literally the fact that they came out and said this stuff recently, and they were the last people to say it within my hearing for me to tolerate. So I'm not sorry. Happy 2nd anniversary. I'm sorry I didn't buy you roses. Next time I will send you chocolate. If you're still here, I love you. Honestly, if you talk to me on social media, I will talk to you and we can be friends. I am a very bad friend with responding, but we can be friends, and I will get better at that eventually. I used to be good at it. Then anxiety hit. 2020.